Ready? Good evening, everyone. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meetings Act, be advised that a notice of this meeting was made by posting on the bulletin board in Town Hall and forwarding to the officially designated newspapers that this meeting would take place at Town Hall at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, September 5th, 2023. Meeting details and the draft agenda were also posted on our township website. Please all stand to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Here.
Ms. Lucas?
Here.
Mr.
Here.
Romano?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
Here.
Mayor Miggins?
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to change the agenda around this evening. I'd like to move the resolution 23-229 to after reports. And I'd also like to remove from the agenda 2645-23. May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote.
Wait, what are we removing? I'm sorry.
We're removing 2645-23.
What is it?
26.
Because there's some verbiage that needs fixing and Mr. Cohen decided that we would have it removed.
Oh,
Okay, it was his, so.
Yep.
Okay,
Thank you, Mayor.
thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Okay. May I have a motion to approve the August 15th, 2023 Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? May I have a motion to approve the August 15th, 2023 Special Township Committee minutes?
So moved.
May I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Okay, we'll get into reports. Deputy Mayor Benaya, do you have any reports for us this evening?
Yes, Mayor. Last week we met on Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board. Early in the year, we started that having every month, just to see the participation from the residents. And as we went along, there were not that many participants in there. So we went back to the same schedule that it was. I think it's once in 2 months or once a quarter. So we had just one last week. And just Township is putting on 4 to 5 or 3 to 4 pedestrian crossing signs where you press the button and the light starts blinking. There's one put in Hartshorn, next to Hartshorn School on White Oak Ridge Road where you can cross the road that way. There are 3 or 4 more signs coming similar. And the team over there has actually expressed their, they were very happy with the way pedestrian crosswalk is going in town or the contract that we have given out. They were happy with the station being filled. So they wanted me, they reiterated it to me and I'm just as a liaison bringing it here that they're happy with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Romano?
Yes, thank you. Explore would like to thank the over 100 guests that attended the 2 wonderful events last week to mark the 3rd anniversary of Explore Milburn Short Hills. We highlighted Upper Milburn Avenue with a mixer co-hosted by the Chamber of Commerce at Tonino's Cigars. And then we finished the night with an anniversary celebration at Jack's Lobster Shack. Also, Explore will be taking part in Rocktoberfest this year with a Biz for Kids event featuring child and teen focused businesses. And finally, Explore has put together hurricane preparedness kits for the businesses that are in the in Explore. Those are available on the website under the resource tab. That's it.
And that's it. Okay, Ms. Prupus?
The two-way traffic for Essex Street report from that Colliers, they took the summer to come up with a concept plan. We're gonna have an internal meeting next week on it, and then so hopefully we'll discuss it at the next township committee meeting on the 19th. The 19th, right?
Yes. That's by the police station. That's where
It's
we
all
were,
of Essex.
all of
from
Essex.
The beginning
Of the firehouse, I
by the
guess,
firehouse.
Sure.
Yeah, or Douglas, like,
all the way
Yeah.
to Main Street, is it?
no, it's all the way
Oh, Milburn Avenue to Milburn Avenue.
All the way on Essex, right?
Essex, yes, on Essex, but all the way down to former Annie Says property, all the way down to the former Wells Fargo property.
Oh, wow, okay, great. So next week internal, then to come to the township. Perfect, okay.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
Mr. Cohen?
Just a couple of things. The committees I'm on don't tend to meet in the summer. The library published record statistics for the summer. Their summer book reading program was a huge success, and their circulation and borrowing and visits and whatnot, the numbers are skyrocketing. So everybody is really happy with that. And at the Arboretum, the organization meeting will be later this week, but we're planning a fundraiser cornhole event in October at the Boxcar, the property outside the Boxcar. There'll be a cornhole tournament with prizes and whatnot, and it's a fundraiser to benefit the Arboretum held in the neighborhood of the Arboretum.
That's great, thank you so much. Mr. Marizzi, did you have any reports for us this evening, sir?
I do have a brief report on Bear Properties.
Great.
Two things. One, the court advised today that the non-binding arbitration in that case will take place in May 2024. And I want to correct the error that I made at the last meeting when I said that what was the subject of the confidentiality agreement was tax returns. I was wrong, as Mr. Feld pointed out. It was actually the leases are the subject to confidentiality agreements. So the substance of the report was correct, but the document I referred to was not precisely accurate. But the court will be dealing with this next May.
Next May.
Next May.
Okay, great. Anything else?
Nothing else.
Nothing else? Mr. McDonald, do you have anything for us this evening, sir?
Yes, just a few brief reports. Just wanted to alert the public that September 9th, Rocktoberfest will be taking place. With that will be a one-day closure of Main Street. I know we just opened it, but that is a part of the festivities with Rocktoberfest, which will take place all day in the park. We're just asking people to utilize the parking deck for parking for that event, and understand that there will be some traffic in the area because it's a very popular event that benefits Milburn Township schools. Wanted to also just remind the public that September 17th, the pond dredging project will commence in Taylor Park. We will be posting materials on the township's website that will show the parts of Taylor Park that will be inaccessible to the public. But the tennis courts will remain open. There will still be access to the Bauer Center, but there will be, obviously the pond and the right-hand side of Bauer Center, when you're looking at it from Whittingham, will be closed off and inaccessible. But that project will finally be getting started and will probably be completed mid-October. Just to piggyback on Deputy Mayor Benayek's report on the pedestrian activated signals throughout the township, we are installing 4 of those. The locations are going to be at Long Hill and Parsonage, Short Hill Circle and Milburn Avenue, which is in front of the high school, Campbell and Upper Milburn Avenue or Milburn Avenue, and Pine Terrace East and Short Hills Avenue. Again, most of these will be periphery crossings by schools or in a business district to start off. The next one that we'll be looking at as well, we had discussed this in the Pedestrian Safety Advisory Board meeting, is the one at Lackawanna Plaza, and that goes from lot 9 to lot 7 for train station riders. So that is the next one that we'll be looking at. And we're winding down on our road projects for 2022. However, we still do have a few remaining for 2023, including Fairfield Drive, Myrtle Avenue, which is on tonight's agenda, as well as Wyoming in the South Mountain section. So still a little bit of work going on, but we were able to get Highland completed over the summer, which I am certainly thankful for with the busyness that has come with the first day of school and the end of summer. So that is all.
And of course, the first day of school, we saw a power outage, so I guess the kids got to have a half day at the high school anyway, right?
1 p.m.
1 p.m. so- Oh, well. A couple things. There's a lot of speeding that's going on right now. We're getting multiple complaints of people within our town that people are speeding all throughout the town. And I think we have to learn to slow down. Children are just starting school. It's a whole new year, and we're just hoping that everybody's listening to us and slow down. Most of the streets in our town are 25 miles an hour. So if you could just go 25 miles an hour, that'd be terrific. Also, as you know, and we've spoken to it a few times, there has been issues with the post office. And it turned out that our police department, and we have the best police department, I'm just going to tell you that. They're wonderful. And they had figured out and set something up where they caught 2 men stealing the mail in Short Hills off the back of the dock, off the back of the dock. So we were thrilled. Oh, we caught them. It's terrific. Yeah, well, we caught 2. We didn't catch the others that are out there. So apparently, we don't know. The police are working on it. It's an active investigation, which of course we're never allowed to talk about. However, there was some more mail stolen, so we are all over it. They are working with the feds on this. We are working with Mikey Sherrill and her office as well. Somebody named Willie. If you need this information, we can send it out to you. If you have missing mail, if you have forged checks, etc., please, the first thing we need you to do is get to the police and file a police report. And then after you do that, then we can move it on to Mikey Sherrill's office. But apparently Milburn Short Hills doesn't have the corner on this. There are other towns experiencing the same thing. And it's very frustrating. I think, Alex, what did you say, 60 already? 60 people have cases?
Well, I think this becomes a direct issue for our detective bureau as each, if something happens as a result of the mail being stolen, it becomes a case or a potential case for them as a result of what might have been stolen, whether it's a credit card or a check or something like that. So this is a real concern to us, making sure not only that our residents' mail is protected, but also from an operational standpoint that we're not adding caseload to our detective bureau.
Thank you. Also, I received, and I wanted just to bring it to everyone's attention for all of us. Dear Mayor Miggins and the Milburn Township Committee, please accept this letter as recognition of a successful 2023 Main Street closure pedestrian mall season. As business owners in downtown Milburn, we're truly grateful that the township has had the vision to close Main Street to vehicular traffic during the summer months in order to create an amazing pedestrian experience. Through the planning by the township and Explore Milburn Short Hills, thousands of people have enjoyed outdoor dining, live music, children's games, fitness classes, yoga over the past 2+ months, and the economic development impact has been tremendous. While other towns are struggling to capture retail and dining customers during the hottest month of the year and during vacation season, Milburn has thrived. Additionally, the spin-off business for shops and restaurants has been noticeable. Milburn has gained a reputation not only as a place that is open for business, but also as being family and pedestrian friendly. The sidewalks on Main Street, Milburn Avenue, and Essex are vibrant at all times of the day, and businesses that people may never notice as their cars drive by are now frequented by those who are waiting for a table in the mall, strolling after dinner, or coming to check out a band. Explore has done a great job modernizing and improving the mall since the effort began in 21. They have worked with the township to add more public seating, streamline the permitting process for tables, and promoted businesses on the surrounding streets with new signage. A strong downtown requires innovation and, more importantly, ongoing commitment to that innovation. We are proud that Milburn has kept this effort going for 3 years and encourage you to continue to promote downtown Milburn as the walkable and family-friendly place that it is. Sincerely, Alex Rubenstein from the Standard. And in addition, there are a whole bunch of other signatures from all different business owners.
Standard.
Yeah, but there's also, hold on, you have Starbucks, you have the barber shop, you have Live Breads, you have Garden State Hemp, you have Blue Mercury, you have David Sorkin, there's a whole New Frontier, so there's a whole bunch of
Most of
names
the
here.
people are on Main Street. Most of the people used, I'm just pointing out,
You can,
and they're-
however,
it's all right. fine.
It was the right thing to do and it's, people are
For them to
excited
thank
about
us,
it.
that totally.
Yeah, I think it was great. So there you go. Now, this evening we have resolution. Let's go with this. About combating anti-Semitism. So give me 2 seconds. Well, first I want to say, as we approach the start of the Jewish New Year, we thought this would be the appropriate time to pass this resolution where we confront and combat anti-Semitism. And hopefully, we will have nothing to atone for next year where this is concerned. So I can find my resolution. Christine, where did we put my resolution? Here we go. So we were first approached, just so you know, by the American Jewish Committee and Rabbi Levy after there was an incident last year of anti-Semitism and bullying and all kinds of other bad things that were happening in our schools with our young folks. And the schools collectively got together with One Milburn, they called it, and it was the schools coming together and the families coming together to start the healing process of these very negative things. So we met with Rabbi Levy and with the American Jewish Committee, and we talked about the idea of being able to come up with a resolution that shows that there is no place for anti-Semitism in our home. And this is our home, this is our town. And we all live together here. So it was very important to me. Lord knows I can't stand a bully, and I'm constantly seeing our Jewish brothers and sisters getting bullied, and it's enough is enough. So we were thrilled to be able to bring this resolution to pass, and so we will vote on it this evening as a township committee. But I'd like Rabbi Levy to, we'll read it, and then I would love for you to be able to say a few words. So we can go right there to the you want to step. And I was thrilled because our rabbis from Rabbi Eisenberg, Rabbi Matt, because I never say the last name properly. That bothers me. But this was so important. It just touched my soul. So let's see. This way. Whereas anti-Semitism, including harassment on the basis of actual or perceived Jewish origin, ancestry, ethnicity, identify, affiliation, or faith, remains a persistent, pervasive, and disturbing problem in American society. And whereas Jewish people continue to be a targeted minority in the United States and are consistently the most likely of all religious groups to be victimized by incidents of hate, and such incidences are increasing at an alarming rate. And whereas we acknowledge the following local attacks in Milburn Township, we had a swatting incident at our congregation, B'nai Israel, and concerning issues among our youth, as well as a deadly attack at a kosher supermarket in Jersey City. There was physical violence against Orthodox Jewish people in Lakewood, and there's been numerous threats against synagogues and institutions throughout the state. Whereas the recent AJC, American Jewish Committee, State of Anti-Semitism in America report found that more than 1 in 3 American Jewish people say that they have been victims of anti-Semitism over the past 5 years. And whereas Milburn Township officials and institutions have a responsibility to protect citizens from acts of hate and bigotry, including anti-Semitism, and must be given tools to do so. And whereas valid monitoring and informed analysis and investigation and effective policymaking all benefit from accurate and uniform definitions. Whereas the International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance, by consensus vote of its member states, adopted a working definition of anti-Semitism in May of 2016, which has become the internationally recognized authoritative definition of anti-Semitism for use by governments and international organizations. That definition reads, anti-Semitism is certain perception of, I'll say Jewish people, which may be expressed as hatred towards Jewish people. Rhetorical and physical manifestations of anti-Semitism are directed toward Jewish or non-Jewish individuals and or their property, toward Jewish community, institutions, and religious facilities. So The IHRA working definition has proven to be an essential tool used to help determine contemporary manifestations of anti-Semitism. And whereas in the United States, the IHRA working definition is recognized by the US National Strategy for Countering Anti-Semitism, is utilized by various government agencies, including the US Department of State and the US Department of Education. And it can be utilized by law enforcement agencies in monitoring, training, and education. Whereas the New Jersey League of Municipalities has recognized this definition. So now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Milburn, New Jersey, that the Township Committee adopts the non-legally binding International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance working definition of anti-Semitism in full. And the Township Committee of the Township of Milburn will ensure that the IHRA working definition of anti-Semitism is available as an educational resource for the Department of Police and other city agencies responsible for addressing anti-Semitism and other forms of discrimination. So now I would like it if we could like to make a motion that the township adopt this resolution. Roll call vote, please.
And second,
Second,
Mr. Coleman,
Yes.
Ms. Prupus,
yes.
Ms. Romano.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Benaya,
Yes.
Mayor Miggins.
Yes.
Thank you.
My pleasure. That's for you, sir. And a few words, would you please?
Sure you want to ask her?
I have three
I knew
guys
at
and a
least-
congresswoman to say a few words. Absolutely, absolutely.
I'll tell you, with three of my colleagues in the room, we could talk for quite a while. I have to first thank Mayor Miggins for inviting us here and inviting us to come meet with you in your office and talk about this issue and begin to address the critical work of countering anti-Semitism here in Milburn, in our state, and in our country. It makes a difference when every municipality does this. Milburn is the 13th municipality in New Jersey to pass one of these, and as you said, with the holy days coming up, it means so much more to pass a resolution like this and for my colleagues to be able to stand in the pulpit and share with their congregations what their town has done to recognize this issue. It's very special for me to be here in this moment, and I'll tell you why. About 30 years ago, I was in this room advocating on a different issue for the Jewish community when I was a rabbi at Temple B'nai Jeshurun at TBJ. And I was just sharing with Eric Francis, that I cut my advocacy teeth in this very room. So to be able to return to this room and to have a resolution like this passed and be able to stand here, it means so much and says so much about Milburn and what Milburn is, and what Milburn stands for. So I'll thank you for that, but I want to thank you for something else. You also connected us with the police department. And in November, we will be meeting on 2 different days because we don't want to leave the town streets without law enforcement.
Correct.
Half of law enforcement one day, half another day, but we will be meeting with law enforcement to discuss how to recognize, how to respond to, and how to help prevent anti-Semitism in our town. And the very fact that this is not just a piece of paper passed in this room, but this is the beginning of concrete steps to make a difference means so much. And so I thank you for that.
Our congresswoman has raised this.
To scare everyone to use the podium.
Okay,
Too long, but I do think this is such a great event, and I'm really proud to stand alongside the Milburn community as the council has introduced this important resolution. I really want to recognize Mayor Miggins, the town council, Rabbi Levy, and the AJC for your leadership on this issue, as well as thank Rabbi Gerwitz and Rabbi Eisenberg for joining us tonight.
One more.
yes.
Thank you so much. You know, when we see these attacks, when we see issues of anti-Semitism, it's important for our Jewish community to see that that's not who we are, that that's not what our towns represent. It's important to our parents to know that the places that we've chosen to raise our children are hate-free places. It's important to me to know that the people that I represent, that I spend day in and day out representing, don't hold values that are so contrary to what I stand for. So these events are important. These events are important to so many of us because I think what's hard to realize sometimes in the age of social media, where sometimes these messages get transmitted so forcefully, it's easy to believe that we are living in an era when everybody thinks this. It's easy to believe that when people go home, they must be having horrible conversations around their dinner table, that we see our children on the streets doing things that are so contrary to the way that we were brought up. And yet that's not the case. These are isolated incidents. They are growing and we're concerned about it and we're addressing it. But when I tell you this, I tell you this because when in the synagogue in my community had a Molotov cocktail thrown at it, the response from the interfaith community, from the community at large on a cold evening was in the thousands. It was standing room only inside the temple. And there was a TV set up outside the temple so people could brave the cold weather to show their support for our community. So these things matter. They matter to our community and they matter to me. So I want to commend you for not shying away from it because it's sometimes easy to think, oh, I don't want to say the wrong thing. I don't want to do the wrong thing. Maybe I better just not say anything. But in times like these, that would be the wrong response. And unfortunately, while the majority of the community does not feel this way, we are seeing too many of these types of incidents. So standing up as a community to declare this is not who we are, again, is important. And we know that prejudice and violence directed at any member of our community affects the community as a whole. I remember telling my mom why I moved to Montclair. And she said, why did you move to Montclair? Is it the schools? Is it that price of the house? She never once said, is it the taxes? And I said, it's the diversity. It's a town that cares about this. And she kind of laughed and said, no, really. It didn't compute for maybe someone of her generation that was so important to me. Because I was lucky enough to be raised in a diverse community. And I sought that out for my kids because I know how it's impacted me. So with the high holidays coming up this month, it's as important as ever that we stand strong so that our rabbis can go out to their communities to say what a beautiful event just took place. And as Millburn's representative in Congress, I'm focused on working together to expand federal resources that are going to root out anti-Semitism. I'm a member of the House Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism, where we engage with the administration, foreign leaders, and civil society in efforts to combat anti-Semitism, promote education and Holocaust remembrance, and eliminate anti-Semitic hatred and bias. I promise to continue to speak up and fight for our Jewish community in the halls of Congress. My door is always open if you have insights that you would like to share on how I can best continue this work. And I just can't tell you how much it means that Millburn immediately reacted and came out with this resolution and to have everyone here tonight. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it.
Just around, sorry. I'm going to take a 5-minute break. Oh, Joseph. Ready? Here we go, Milburn. Public comment. When invited to speak to offer your comments, please come to the lectern, clearly state your name and whether you're a Milburn resident and or property or business owner. Please do not provide your full address, seeing our meetings are recorded and are readily available to the public. For the convenience of our community, there is a remote option. If you called in and would like to comment, please press *6 now. And if you're attending by computer or electronic device, please click the raise hand button and be sure your video is on when you comment. All members of the public wishing to speak will be put into the queue to address the committee. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers shall limit their comments to 1 3-minute session. You will be prompted when there is 30 seconds remaining. Oh, that's all, folks. You will be prompted when there's 30 seconds remaining. A reminder that this is not a time for dialogue or to debate a matter. And this is a time during our business meeting for the public to offer comments. After the conclusion of public comment period, and if they wish to, professionals and committee members may respond to comments made by the public. Members of the public are welcome to contact the township or township committee at any time outside of our business meetings for requests for information or with questions. A reminder that we are all neighbors and personal attacks are strongly discouraged. I will now open the public comment period.
Josh Sharp, Short Hills. I'm sorry that Rabbi left because, you know, the common understanding, the adage is if you put 3 Jews together, you have 5 points of view. So the thing with anti-Semitism, both my parents are Holocaust survivors. 93 members of our family were killed in the Holocaust. I've lived here for 30 years. I haven't experienced any anti-Semitism in 30 years. So what has changed? Is there a new demographic in town that's moving in that is changing the dynamics in town? Are we seeing that, you know, something that's been very stable become unstable? I don't know, and I hope the Township Committee can answer that, to respond to that. There has, seriously, in 30 years of my living here, I've never had, and certainly I'm the canary in the coal mine. Not only are my parents Holocaust survivors, I'm Israeli. I would have detected anti-Semitism. It does not exist in this town. So either there is some new dynamics or something else is going on here. And anti-Semitism, the topic of anti-Semitism always comes up during a campaign, always. And always from the same quarters. So it's all very curious. And I want the TC to investigate and to give clear examples. I know this thing with some teenagers on a bus coming home from a party, chanting something. But does that warrant what's happened here? The meeting, this, you know, we've just branded Milburn an anti-Semitic town thanks to this. And it isn't. And I'm certainly testament to that. Never happens. Thank you for listening to me.
Jeffrey Feld, Short Hills resident. A lot has changed since our last meeting. And since my first appearance 3 years ago, there is something called the marketplace of competing ideas. And at the last meeting, one of you council members chastised that the same group of people keep on coming. I'll keep on coming because there's something called the sin of silence. And I'm surprised none of the rabbis mentioned that without the presentation. As to the bill list, I've been asking since for an accounting of how much legal fees we paid before August 1st, 2021, and how much we paid post. If you look at the bill list, we're paying the Marizzi firm $20,000 dedicated specifically for the DPW project, which has been contested. In addition, on the bill list, there's a payment for someone who transcribes these meetings. If taxpayers are paying for those transcripts, why aren't they posted next to the meetings? The agenda, the minutes, and the videos, so we have a linkage to see whether the minutes really accurately reflect what was said at these meetings. On your bill list, you have tax appeal credits. There's a repetitive comment. I would ask that going forward, you at least tell us how much you give granting as a taxpayer per that bill, because I think it's about in excess of $100,000 this time, and how much we have done through the year. There's a resolution later on that's not on the consent agenda about Willow Court, about the acquisition. This is a statutory question about the local lands and buildings law. When you acquire property as a municipality, what's the proper method of doing it? That's a statutory question. The statute is clear. You approve it by ordinance, not by resolution. I've been through this battle for 13 years. And then the question, I made Oprah requests for information about the appraisal, understanding why we're doing this. $2.5 million is a lot of money in my world. I think the public should understand what is the plan. We've been heard at the last meeting because of active listening, if you stayed, that you're using that space for when you did rehabilitation. What would have been the cost if you leased the space for the timeline? Would it be up to $2.4 million? I don't know. There's a question about date and time stamps of documents. This goes to the Main Street closure that you all praised. I made an open request. There's no proof of when the opinion was received dated July 29th. Some kind of documents came in. There's questions about litigation, about when a probable cause summons came in. We can't find it. There should be documents that are produced by or received by this the township that should be dated and timestamped when it's received. Thank you. And everyone, again, Lashana Tova for the people who will be celebrating the holidays.
Hello, committee. Hi, Diane Eglow, Milburn.
Hello.
Alex, I don't know, I didn't see them today, if the orange cones are gonna go back on Ridgewood and Beach Terrace. It made a huge difference last year. The parents continue to park in front of the fire hydrant, on a yellow line, on the curb, and it's really dangerous for the kids. I did put in something to the SDL portal for PSAP, and it's about nobody stops at the stop sign at Beach and Greenwood. These are my neighbors. These are the parents who are going to South Mountain School. My husband saw a near collision within feet between a neighbor and a school bus. Alex, I don't know what you can do to make that stop sign more visible at Beach coming onto Greenwood. It's behind a tree. People don't see it. They don't want to see it. You talked about speeding, Maggie. It's really unbelievable what goes on in this town. The other day I was going to get bagels. People are still double parking in front of new spots. Double parking. So now they're double parking in front of the new parking. I don't know if they're successful or not, those spots. So blocking another lane of traffic. There was an officer sitting on Home Street, and I said to him, why are you not down? It's not me to tell him where he goes to work, but why are you not down on Milburn Avenue at lunchtime, keeping these cars moving and not double parking? Definitely a problem there. I'm glad there's going to be start fining and telling people they can't put their garbage out in plastic bags. They have to have a trash can. The problem is not putting out the trash early. It's about people putting their trash out in a bag and leaving their trash cans out for 3 days or the whole week to the next garbage pickup. That's more the problem. I'm wondering if there's any movement or update on improving cell service on JFK in the Poet section. People ask me about that because something I talked about when I was up there. I am on JFK, cell service drops all the time. All my friends in the Poet section have no cell service. I think of a town that was just voted, the second most affluent town in New Jersey, to not give your residents proper cell service is just unacceptable. The other thing is everyone knows what happened in Maui, that there was a failure of the emergency system. And I'm curious, what is the backup from Milburn's emergency system? Like, I think people worry about flooding here, but have we ever worried about fires? We are surrounded by the South Mountain Reservation. In times of drought, if there was a fire in the reservation, what is the evacuation plan? What is the county's notification? Like, what would they do? So I'm just wondering, what is our backup for emergency broadcast? When cell service should go down? Okay, thanks, everybody.
Jess, can you move that so I can see, because I can't see. I can't see. Great. Just I want to be able to see. Okay, thank you. That's good, just like that. I just need to be able to see it. You can't see. I'll let you know.
Okay, as long as my time doesn't start while I'm moving the mic, just checking. I feel pressure. Okay, I'm going to hand out something before I start speaking. So just, unfortunately, I apologize, I didn't have time to run my printer, so it's a quick read, so maybe you guys could kind of share it. Next time I can do a presentation. It's just a little, oops, there's a piece missing. Thank you. So I just put together a little PowerPoint deck on what's going on in the Fairfield estate section. Quite a few people are unhappy about it, and I've had a lot of conversations about the street issue. We're under construction. They're redoing some of the water pipes, and they're also redoing the entire gas line and the gas connections to the houses. And quite frankly, it's been a total disaster. There's no communication from the town, which is really, really quite upsetting. This has been going on. It was supposed to be going on since April, but they actually started in July. And so the roads have been actually very unsafe, and I've actually complained about it to Alex numerous times. And in this deck, you can go through ahead, just kind of like, I've been taking photos as I go through. It is a joke of a construction site. I was told, and Alex, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I was told that it's a roadway and I shouldn't be walking in it. And we don't have sidewalks. So I don't know where people walk their dogs, or kids are just not supposed to play in the streets, whatever. But I just want to go through on page 1, you can see on page 2, you can see all the uneven patch jobs that were done. My expectation of a patch job with concrete or asphalt is basically, it's going to obviously look discolored, but it should be cut clean and it should be at the surface level, okay? It should not be like 4 inches above grade or 3 inches below grade, so you can walk in it and trip. So I'm really annoyed. You can see all the pictures going through actually page 4, and then on page 5, you can start to see all the loose stones, sand, stone dust, and debris that's been left since July all over a road. And I've actually called PSNG probably like 8 times about this, and they finally came out and partially cleaned it up. But literally, I skidded out just walking my dog, like on the sand in the gravel, because it was strewn across the entire roadway. And it wasn't just on my road, it was also on Fairfield Drive, Fairfield Terrace, and Martindale. So you can see on page 5 and 6, you can just see it. It's like it's everywhere. It's just, and they ended up cleaning up some of it. It's not fully clean, but it's a lot better. But that was basically on me riding PSG every day. Okay, that's how that ended. So going on, you can see more of it on page 9, page 10. And then page 11, you start to see they also left clumps of like the asphalt. So basically, I watched these guys pave. They were like dumping it in a truck. And by the way, they didn't tamp at all on my street. So that creates problems because things actually will sink and you're going to get sinkholes in the road. And then you're going to pave over it and then you're going to have to redo it later. So I watched all of that. It was really disturbing to me. Plus all that tar that was all over the place. I got to drive through it and drag it into my driveway. Now I have tar in my garage and I have tar on my paving stones, okay? And then you can see all their heavy equipment pulled up the tar from underneath the micro paving that was done like literally 15 years ago. I don't think my road's been paved in 30 years, like fully paved. So I don't know what's going on. Alex told me they're paving in October. PSCNG tells me they can't pave for 90 to 120 days. So I'm trying to understand what's going on. You can see there's the most important thing I'm concerned about. I know that they blew stone dust all over the place, all over. There's pictures in it here as well, and you can see it. I mean, it's just, the list goes on and on. I just want to point out one thing.
Ms. Best, your time is up. Thank you very much.
I know, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Jerry Kung. I'm a resident of Short Hills. I just wanted to start by respectfully disagreeing with Mr. Scharf. Just because we don't have measurements of something doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. So, you know, I think Mr. Scharf had said something along the lines of he doesn't think anti-Semitism exists in our community. I'm going to respectfully disagree with what he said. We just don't know the extent to which this is happening in our community. And I think that we probably need better reporting in the sense of counts over time, harassment, intimidation, bullying statistics year over year. I say this as an Asian American. I personally have not been on the receiving end of any anti-Asian hate in this community, but I'm not going to stand up here and say that it doesn't exist. I think that it's very important for a community to stand together in solidarity with every member of the community to make sure that we all feel safe in our home, and this is our home, as Mayor Megan said. That being said, I'm going to move on to the original contents of my what I plan to talk about, which is Resolution 23-228. I'm a little confused as to why this is being done by resolution. I know Mr. Feld had pointed this out earlier in terms of why is this a resolution instead of an ordinance. So I looked it up. New Jersey Statute 40A, Municipalities and Counties, 12-5, Section A, any county by resolution or any municipality by ordinance may provide for the acquisition of any real property, capital improvement, or personal property. Now, based on my read of Resolution 23-228, which ends, now therefore be it resolved by the Township Committee of the Township of Milburn, the mayor of the Township of Milburn or her designee is hereby authorized to execute the agreement of sale in a form subject to the approval of the Township Attorney and to take any other action necessary to effectuate the purpose of the resolution. So, we seem to have a direct contradiction with the New Jersey state statute. So I'm going to ask a couple questions here. Why have you chosen to do this by resolution instead of ordinance tonight? Is it related in any way, shape, or form to the different public noticing requirements and opportunities for public comment related to this particular action that you're seeking? How was the purchase price of $2.2 million negotiated? And what is the actual use of this property? So I'm curious as to what your thoughts on are this, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Jean Pasternak, resident. While we're on the subject of the Willow Street purchase, was there any attempt to inform the community about a $2.5 million purchase on Willow Street? And what shape did that take exactly? Is there something written? Is there something discussed? And were residents able to question and discuss this purchase, since it will be our money, our tax dollars that will be used to purchase it? Was there any cost benefit analysis? I remember we had a discussion about that sort of thing regarding the par 3. I think Ms. Romano had mentioned that would be a good thing to do. Was that done in this situation? What other properties were considered? Were other leases or were leases considered? There's vacant office space in this town that could be considered as an alternative. Was that considered? Who did the analysis? Could you present to us this evening some outline of the process that you used to consider this real estate purchase using our tax dollars? Thank you.
Good evening, Sarah Sherman, Milburn resident. Initially, I had only one topic, and interestingly, it is consistent with Ms. Eglow's remarks, because she must have read the same article I did, which is about the limitation of alert systems via cell phone, which are very popular in many municipalities. But what people who advise on emergency alerts are suggesting is that that we build in redundancies, so that the alert system becomes just one layer, and that there are others that can be used. So I remembered that when I moved here more than 30 years ago, we were informed of snow days by the sounding of a siren. And I didn't know that the first time. And I'm wondering if such a system is still operable. And I was thinking of it more in terms of the speed with which flooding might occur, as it did 2 years ago, almost a little past 2 years ago. And, you know, when we went running to our basements or whatever, is there something that would accompany the wireless emergency notification, which is effective, but apparently there are situations in which it might not be. So I raised that. I wasn't going to say anything, but I have to say that I was disturbed by Mr. Sharp's remarks. I'm a member of Congregation B'nai Israel, and I was sent by my rabbi to represent the congregation at Milburn 1. I was also in the sanctuary on the day of the swatting. And so I am a little emotional about it and on one level, but I do believe that the township at the level of the Board of Education and certainly at this level is taking matters like this very seriously and attempting to address them. And I don't think we're labeling ourselves in any way. There are microaggressions, there are different forms of anti-Semitism that might not be overt, just as there are forms of racism and other kinds of discrimination that are not overt. And just because one individual may not have experienced that does not mean that others have not. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sherman. Want to see who's online, Jess? We just have someone coming online first, please. Thank you.
Good evening, Perry Urso, 514 Milburn Avenue, Short Hills. In regards to the pedestrian safety comments during the reports, I appreciate the attentions to the crosswalks. Mr. McDonald, can you please explain why the crosswalk at Glenwood Avenue and Milburn Avenue have been taken away? And why the pedestrians now have to walk against the construction and cross over a driveway to incoming cars and vehicles to cross over Milburn Avenue to get to the other side into the Glenwood section? And would you conclude that this is purely convenience for the newly constructed project without the interest of the township, Milburn Township residents at hand? I brought my initial safety concerns to our BA in early 2020. There still remains unaddressed safety concerns, which were initiated and approved July 2022. And it was the capital appropriation ordinance number 26-1-22. So, which reflects to the improvements for the project of lot 14, which now has been delayed to 2024. Are those monies still in escrow, or do they cascade into a general fund? And does the new capital appropriation occur for will a new one have to occur for the lot 14 project when it does take effect again? In the meantime, what precautionary measures will be taken to ensure pedestrian and vehicular safety? Mayor Miggins, you just read during your reports a letter you received and which you read to the public, and you were quick to respond to a fellow committee woman's comments. I'd request that you, Mayor, Ms. Romano, and Mr. Cohen, if they and all of you support taxation without representation. If not, please tell the public, Mayor, and your fellow committee members, Romano and Cohen, your position on the economic vitality of the editor and the letter, which was also supported by other downtown merchants, benefiting at the detriment and expense of the other districts, and their continual support to the same merchants. Why is that? Mr. Marazziti, will you now finally meet attorney and resident Feld before May 2024 regarding the Bear properties? Lastly, I'd like to echo Mr. Kung and Ms. Pasternak's comments regarding the acquisition of Willow Street. Is this once again a rimback purchase? And I think that the public should be privy of their questions. And I would also add that If it's going to be a repeat of the Rimback, you paid over $2 million for a parking lot. So I think at this point, before you approve anything, you need to enlighten the township and the municipality. Thank you, and happy birthday, Ms. Eglo.
So old.
Hi, Ben Stoller, Milburn resident. I wasn't planning to speak tonight. I was at the wrong attire. I was at the golf tournament for the Milburn Police PBA. It was a fantastic event today, but 6 hours in the sun, as Mr. Cohen said, the sunblock didn't work. It was so hot out there today. I wasn't planning to speak, but listening to tonight's events really struck a chord with me. I was listening to the events, and Mr. Scharf, such. My daughter is in that class, and she was affected by what happened on that bus and what the hatred that was pushed forward. So it does have a visceral reaction to me, and I commend the board for passing such an ordinance and such. And I agree. When I grew up in my family, my dad used to say, love, service, and sacrifice. If you live by those rules, you'll be very successful and you'll give back to the community. Well, I think that should be done by everyone on the dais, everyone running for a township committee membership. I'm running to be on the committee, and that we should all take that into effect, that words do hurt. And hate has no place in Milburn, Short Hills. And from that standpoint, that's for everyone. Republicans, Democrats, they don't mean anything. We're all neighbors. At the end of the day, Maggie Sherrill is the Congresswoman for all New Jersey residents, not just Democrats, not just Republicans, et cetera. So thank you for passing the ordinance, and that's about it. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Hi, my name is Frank Sacamandi, and I'm a resident of Short Hills. So I'd first like to start by commending the Township Committee on the resolution to fight against anti-Semitism. And I think it's something that's very important that we do as a town. But I also think as a town, we need to look at the other forms of hate, the other hate that might be occurring against different groups in town. So I would ask the Township Committee to consider adopting a resolution denouncing all forms of hate in Milburn, because really anyone that calls Milburn their home should feel safe to walk the streets, to go to the stores, to interact with one another without any fear that there's any sort of hate or discrimination. So what you did is a good start. Let's take it one step further and let's make Milburn hate-free. Thank you very much.
I will now close the public comment period. Ms. Krupas, do you have anything you'd like to respond to? From
Yes. Well, I'm just hoping that Alex will address the parking in front of the deli, because we didn't get an update on how that's going.
Yep.
And also the question about why we're doing this why we're doing 23, the acquisition of property in East Willow as a ordinance, as a resolution instead of an ordinance. And the questions about kind of the use of the property, how it was negotiated, and yeah, those three.
Okay, so we'll let the attorney and Alex speak to that. Any other besides those?
No.
No. Okay, Mr. Cohen?
I just want to go on record that I very much disagree with Mr. Scharf. And while I'm happy that he's never experienced anti-Semitism, as they said, it was 1 out of 3 people who have. I guess he's in the 2 out of 3 that haven't, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. And I just totally disagree with his comments.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
I actually echo both the committeemen and women comments. First of all, I disagree there as well. It should be hate-free and we should take it to the next level. But first thing first, whatever we saw recently, we have passed the ordinance for it, and I'm very proud of it. So that's a great thing. Moving along on the second one, even I like to know, why is it resolution versus ordinance? let's just make sure it is done in the right way. And if we have to go over 3 public comments, we should go over 3 public comments before we buy the property. So there is no rush here. Thank you.
Ms. Romano?
I'm just gonna agree with my fellow committee members, and we've said it, hate has no place here.
Now, Mr. Mariziti, would you like to speak to?
Yes, I
why
will
it's a
address
resolution? Thank
the
you.
issue in the room.
Thank you.
The resolution authorizes the execution of an agreement to purchase property, which is subject to many further steps. And the agreement itself anticipates that there will be an ordinance that will be required in order to complete the transaction. It's a question of the steps along the way. There will also need to be a bond ordinance to authorize the financing. There is a due diligence period that the township has. It has the option after the due diligence period to terminate the agreement. So this is a preliminary step. There is also another step that needs to be taken, and that is the capital review before the planning board, the courtesy review before the planning board. So there will definitely be an ordinance necessary before the final agreement and transfer of title takes place. There will be a public hearing about that. There's not an effort to avoid notices of public hearing or to hear from the public at all. Because the agreement is contingent upon several factors, the agreement is not final. And before it's final, all of those steps will be taken, and the agreement itself identifies that an ordinance will be required.
Are we still going with the ordinance here for the bond 2.5 million to pay for it?
Yes, there's, in order to acquire property, there's got to be the money for it. There's got to be an ordinance under the local lands and buildings law. That's absolutely correct. And there must be a courtesy capital review before the planning board. And all of those steps are identified in the agreement, which is just like buying a house. It's always contingent upon a house inspection, a mortgage contingency. There are many things that have to happen before the deed passes and the title closes. And this agreement, we worked all that out in negotiations with the seller, and it's all understood in the document.
So we can step away from this anytime we want.
You have a 60-day period to do the due diligence and exercise your option to terminate the agreement if you choose to do that.
And within that 60 days, we'll have ordinance 1 and ordinance 2 here to listen.
No, you won't have all of it. You'll have the ordinance for the bond, which sets the stage for the money. The ordinance to approve it under local lands and buildings law will follow after the due diligence period, so that we can introduce it, adopt it.
But so then I'm confused. So if that ordinance fails, but the agreement is passed at 60 days, what happens then?
If you don't take those 3 steps I mentioned, passing a bond ordinance, adopting the ordinance to authorize the acquisition of the property under the local lands and buildings law, and proceeding before the planning board with the courtesy capital review, the transaction fails.
So even though we approve this resolution,
Yes.
it's not binding. It's
No,
not binding.
it's not the final step. It's the initial
first
step.
step.
It's the first step. It's the step that's authorizing, executing the purchase agreement. Like when you buy a house, there's that step. Then there are things that have to happen after that step is taken. Then when all of that is done, you have a closing and the deed passes. So all of those things have to happen. All of those votes have to be taken and they have to succeed.
So this will be about like a 3-month process. 2 to 3 month
Yeah,
process.
2 to 3 month process.
So plenty of time for people to talk about it. for us to
Absolutely.
Talk about it as a community.
Absolutely right. Yes. There's a hearing on the bond ordinance. There will be a separate hearing on the ordinance under the local lands and buildings law, which has been mentioned several times tonight. That's been acknowledged in the agreement.
Great.
Mhm.
Did you have anything else, Mr. Marizzuti? while you
I
have
don't.
floor?
The other issues are policy questions about the use and the negotiations and so on that
Okay.
I
Mr.
wasn't
McDonald.
involved in.
So just a few things quickly. Me person Prupus had asked about the angled parking and how that's been going. So far, it's been going very well. We have not had any accidents as a result of the angled parking, knock on wood. We've reviewed some video of it and everybody seems to be handling it well. There has been, even with the angled parking, some instances of double parking within a small space between the car that's parked there and the lane. There's also been some instances of double parking in the other travel lane. But all in all, in terms of complaints received and any accidents or any other issues as a result of the angled parking, so far so good. However, what I would like to do is keep it in place now that Main Street is open, so that we can see the interaction of the left-hand turn from Main Street with that angled parking and observe that for a week or so. So that is what we have thus far. And again, have reviewed some video of it, particularly around lunchtime when it's busy in and around that area. I just would like to address Miss Best and her PowerPoint present slides here. And last week, Miss Best had come into the office and sat down with me for about 15-20 minutes. We had a discussion on this very topic. I asked her to send me the photos, which are undoubtedly in this PowerPoint, so that I could bring that up directly with PSE&G, knowing that I had a meeting with them the next morning. I did bring up these concerns to them. It again was told to me that Martindale and Fairfield Terrace will be paved curb to curb, that the issues that are there are temporary. I've asked them again, and actually that particular day that we were speaking to PSE&G, we had a street sweeper up in the area to make sure that the area was cleaned up. I've also asked PSE&G repeatedly to have a street sweeper go up to their sites and make sure that it's cleaned up and everything's tidy. So I've been in conversation with PSE&G. Obviously, I will make sure that these pictures find their way to our area rep as well, so that they understand the concerns of the residents. But I will just note that it is a temporary situation, that the roads will be paved curb to curb.
All three roads.
Yeah, well, Fairfield Drive, we are doing as a municipality. Fairfield Terrace and Martindale are going to be paved curb to curb by PSE&G. No. I said paved, milled and paved, curb to curb.
Yeah, curb to curb.
So,
Okay. Great. What about the,
Yeah, no,
Because of the schools.
absolutely. Ms. Eglow's comments regarding the beach in Greenwood, I'll follow up with that tomorrow, just to, as that was, I'm sorry, Ridgewood and Beach. That was something that was in place last year and something that certainly should have continued into the new year, but first day of school, we'll make sure that it's back up and going. And then we'll take a look at the Beach in Greenwood stop sign.
Is there a way to light that up like we have other stop signs where they have the lights all around flashing?
You can do that anywhere you want. It's just a matter of, it's just a matter of whether the people that live in that particular area will have an issue with the light flashing all the time. So I think first step, we will perhaps spruce up the sign if it needs to be spruced up, or make it more visible, and if need be, look at enforcement. Yeah, I mean, that's something I'm gonna have to look into, is in terms of cell phones and whether the siren system is still operational, and we'll certainly look into that. And just by way of answering some of the questions regarding the property at 22 East Willow. As I stated at the last meeting, the township is currently looking at and is moving along with some design and programmatic changes no changes are taking place. We are sketching them out and designing them at this point for presentation to the township committee, and then hopefully at some point discussing with the public some of the changes that may or may not take place with town hall. 22 East Willow would be a suitable location for any relocation of township staff during that process. And something that has a parking lot, is accessible to the public, and would serve well the way that it is currently set up to house offices for municipal services. The long-term plan for that property, and which has been indicated in some of the surveying that's been done by topology for the open space, which will be coming out to the public in the near future, but is that the community desires more community recreation space as it relates to seniors, as it relates to recreation space, classroom space, things like that. Again, the building as it's set up is already set up for that. And whether that would be something that could be refurbished into that use or could be changed into that use by demolition and rebuilding, that's something that will be decided in the future, but that is the purpose and the public purpose for purchasing that building. Currently, right now, we have Bauer Center, which is not as accessible, particularly to our senior population. There's no parking in close proximity. Giroux, which is a smaller and outdated building as well. So that is the future plan for 22 East Willow. And that will be certainly developed further as well.
Okay.
That is all I have for now.
Okay, great. The Township Committee will now consider consent agenda resolutions. Are there any comments from the committee in regards to any items listed on the consent agenda?
Can you just name the appointment to the zoning board of adjustment?
It's in my thing. It's not in my stuff.
Is that the same candidate that we got the email from you, Christine?
Yeah.
I don't- Why isn't that in the thing? Where's it on yours?
The last item, it's the last.
Oh. 23-227, I'm sorry. 20, that is going to be Priscilla Sarab.
Position, board adjustment to an unexpired term with a term of expiration of December 31st, 2024.
Great, okay. May I have a motion to approve resolution 23-217 through resolution 23-227, which are listed on the consent agenda?
So
may I have a second? Second. Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Romano?
yes,
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
Yes.
Mayor Miggins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Resolution 23-228 to authorize execution of an agreement of sale between the Township of Milburn and Wyman Associates LLC for the purchase of 22 East Willow Street, block 1004, lot 6. Mr. McDonald, you did provide some of the overview. Is there anything else or any other comments from the committee about this? Anything else we need to do? You think you covered everything?
No, I think it's just important to note that this is a necessary first step so that the township can gain access to the property, to be able to do our due diligence and determine, and provide that information back to the committee prior to that ordinance that Mr. Marizzi had described.
So moved.
I have a motion to approve resolution 23-228. May I have a second?
second,
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Prupus?
Yes.
Ms. Romano?
yes,
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
No.
Mayor Miggins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ordinance 2648-23. Ms. Romano, you were scheduled to sponsor this ordinance, bond ordinance.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2648-23, bond ordinance to authorize the acquisition of real property for public purposes in, by, and for the Township of Milburn in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $2,500,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issue of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds.
You good?
I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023.
May I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen,
yes.
Ms. Lucas, Ms. Absent, Ms. Romano,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Beniah,
No,
Mayor Miggins.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I'm a yes.
Please return. Ms. Lucas,
Yes.
Mr. Vinayak, you are scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2649-23.
thank you, Mayor. I'd like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2649-23. Bond ordinance to authorize the undertaking of various improvements to the Milburn Avenue entrance to Taylor Park in, by, and for the Township of Milburn in the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $300,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes in anticipation of the issuance of such bonds. Mr. McDonald, do you want to explain a little bit more on this or self-explanatory?
Yeah, so this is a bond ordinance for the Taylor Park Gateway. As was discussed at the end of last year, it was the desire of the committee to pare down what the consultants had brought forth and be able to do some improvements to that entrance of Taylor Park, in particular access, and clearing some of the way, and presenting a more open sort of entrance to Taylor Park. And that is what this money is for.
Thank you, Mr. McDonald. I move that this
I have a
ordinance,
Question,
go ahead.
do we have the plans for that or drawings, or is this just saying this is how much money we would be willing to spend? Now show us what we can do with this, and is it in-house, like who's
So-
designing it?
So it will not be in-house, but it will be a not a landscape architect that is looking at the entire property or at an expense that does not have a dollar value or a budget to it. I'm anticipating a local landscape architect that would be able to address, this. Some of the work may be able to be done in-house with DPW, especially when it comes to clearing any trees or the planting of trees or things like that. But in terms of access, asphalt work, or stone work or any hardscaping, that would be something that would likely be bid out. So that is what we're looking at for this particular project, but it establishes a budget for that project.
Anybody else has any question? No? May I?
You may.
I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen,
Yes.
Ms. Lucas.
Yes.
Ms. Romano.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Beniah,
Yes,
Mayor Miggins.
Yes.
Thank you.
Ordinance 2650-23. I would like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2650-23. It's a bond ordinance to authorize the relocation of certain facilities and operations from the DPW yard in, by, and for the Township of Milburn and the County of Essex, State of New Jersey, to appropriate the sum of $600,000 to pay the cost thereof, to make a down payment, to authorize the issuance of bonds to finance such appropriation, and to provide for the issuance of bond anticipation notes and anticipation of the issuance of such bonds.
Yes, this is a $600,000 bond ordinance for the relocation of some aspects of DPW at a time, or an anticipated time that's necessary. We had discussed in previous meetings about this being moved to JFK, that there is some site work that is necessary there, including concrete pads, stabilization of the site, and any paving that is necessary, permits, things like that, to be able to put storage or any convenience facilities up there.
Any questions? I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading, and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with law on the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023. May I have a second?
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
yes.
Ms. Lucas?
No.
Ms. Romano?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
Yes.
Mayor Miggins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Prufus, you are scheduled to sponsor ordinance 2651-23.
I would like to present an ordinance entitled ordinance number 2651-23. Ordinance for adoption of the floodplain management regulations of Milburn Township. An ordinance by the Township Committee amending the Milburn Township Code of Ordinances. To repeal Article 7 of the Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance, Section DRZ-701 through Section DRZ-705. To adopt a new Article 7 of the Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance in Section DRZ-70, I don't know, to adopt, okay, got it. Section DRZ-701 through 705. To adopt flood hazard maps to designate a floodplain administrator and providing for variability and an effective. This ordinance repeals and replaces Article 7 titled Flood Damage Prevention of the Milburn Township Development Regulations and Zoning Ordinance. Section DRZ 7-701 through Section DRZ-705 to adopt new floodplain management regulations concerning the development of land and to designate a floodplain administrator. Alex?
Yeah,
Give an
these
explanation.
are the changes that have been prescribed with the DEP regarding flood control.
So we have no choice.
That is correct.
I move that this ordinance be taken up and passed on first reading and that the township clerk be authorized to have the ordinance published in accordance with the law in the item and for hearing and final passage on Tuesday, October 3rd, 2023.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Ms. Lucas?
Yes.
Ms. Romano?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
Yes.
Mayor Miggins?
Yes. Resolution 26-230 and ordinance 2643-23 as amended. Ms. Romano, you are scheduled to sponsor.
I would like to make a motion for the following amendments to ordinance 2646-23 as per the recommendations of the planning board and set forth in resolution 23-230, and Mr. Petto is in attendance this evening to review the amendments.
Mr. Petto? Thank you, sir.
Good evening.
Is that close enough?
Yes, I think everything. Good evening, Mayor, members of the Township Committee. Graham Petto here this evening as the Township Planner. As alluded to by Ms. Romano's opening remarks, the ordinance before you this evening, 2646-23, was referred to the Planning Board for advisory review in accordance with NJSA 4455D-64. All zoning and land use regulation ordinance amendments are required to go over to the Planning Board for advisory review. During the course of the review, the Planning Board opined on the proposed modification to the minimum front yard setback within the R3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 and 8 districts within the township. The board expressed concern regarding the permission of the minimum front yard setback in the R3, 4, 5, and 6 zones to be forward of the prevailing front yard setback line. The board felt that it was better to maintain the prevailing front yard setback line as the lowest minimum and not allow for any encroachment forward of the prevailing front yard setback line. The amendment before you this evening does just that. It removes the provision of 85% of the prevailing front yard setback line and establishes 100% of the prevailing front yard setback. In effect, this means that any development must be at the prevailing front yard setback line, and the prevailing front yard setback we have as a definitional amendment that's also contained within the same ordinance. The prevailing front yard setback is now a calculation defined by ordinance that averages the existing front yard setback of the 6 adjacent dwellings on the same side of the street. So you add up the front yard setback for the adjoining properties. If it's 29 feet, that's the 29 feet is the minimum front yard setback. Essentially, this is to establish and maintain uniformity in the neighborhood character and presentation of the street. so we have a better presentation of homes along certain frontages. Happy to entertain any questions. Anybody has anything further?
Ladies and gentlemen, any questions?
Thank you. Section 2, under 1.
Did you say address the audience or the questions or just the?
No. No, the TC.
Section 2, under 1D, DRZ-606-2, residential R3, R4, R5, R6 shall be amended and shall read as follows. Front setback, or 3, 4, 5, 6, 100% of prevailing front yard setback, 100% of prevailing front yard setback. Section 4, specifically E3C of the draft ordinance, contains revisions to DRZ-606.4, the residential R-8 minimum front yard setback for attached dwellings of 75% of the prevailing front yard setback. In accordance with the planning board's recommendations, this has also been revised to be 100% of the prevailing front yard setback.
I have a question.
Go ahead. Yeah, Mr. Petta?
Was it always 100% or was it 80% and now it's moved to 100%?
So previously it was, there was 85% for the R3, 4, 5, and 6 districts and 75% for the R8 district. So now we're going to 100% for all of those prevailing calculations.
When did that change?
This is the recommendation that the planning board recommended that they return back to the TC.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions?
So then what are we changing if it's 100%?
So previously, so the prevailing front yard setback previously in the originally drafted ordinance allowed for the minimum front yard setback to be 85% of that prevailing front yard setback calculation. So say it was calculated at 29%, you could
No,
come down.
The current rule is 40.
The current
Yeah,
regulation,
right.
yes, is 40.
So that is where the pre-zoning commission that I'm a part of as well,
Correct.
they came up with this recommendation of 85% and it's changed to 100%. So what are we changing from the current rule that we already have in town?
So now presently, so from the current rule is 40 feet across the board. So if you're in an established neighborhood where everybody's 25 feet from the front property line, the requirement on any property is still 40 feet. So anyone has to go to the zoning board to approve that. Under this proposed revision, at 100% of the prevailing, you do the prevailing calculation, which is 25 feet. So now a homeowner can make modifications to the property within 25 feet. The 25-foot front yard is the required space that must be kept open, not 40. So, many homes encroach into existing front yards under the current.
So was it shown to the pre-zoning commission again for their input? Because planning board came up with this 100% now. Would they see and say, no, this is not what we looked into, or this is not what we suggested, and this is not the way to go?
So I don't want to necessarily look to Mr. Marizzi as far as due process, but this ordinance was put together, as you alluded to, by the zoning code examination subcommittee, and then was introduced here before this body as the township committee in its original form. The ordinance, as I mentioned, was referred statutorily to the planning board for advisory review under NJSA 40:55D-64. At that time, the board reviewed it and determined that the ordinance amendment is consistent with the master plan to smooth administrative review of properties and applications. But they also wanted to provide some recommendations back. So this is the recommendation back to the full township committee. As the ordinance has already been introduced, this was scheduled to be your second reading this evening to discuss the recommendation from the planning board.
Okay.
Yes, because the proposal is to accept the recommendations of the planning board after reviewing the proposed ordinance. What is on the agenda tonight is to make these amendments that have been read by Committeewoman Romano, and then also to postpone the public hearing to another night, which would be on the revised ordinance to reflect this recommendation.
So it wouldn't go back to the zoning committee?
No.
Then, okay.
No, because
But
this is,
that committee can talk about it at the public hearing.
Got it.
Yeah, but it's not a requirement that it go back
No.
because we're accepting their recommendation. Doesn't always happen, but
Okay.
this is a.
Well, we
the
haven't
proposal.
accepted them yet.
No, you have not. This
We
is a
can vote
proposal.
not to.
You can vote not to.
That is
Yes, you can. But
So-
what's in?
But I think this is like an important question
Yes,
of where this, that Sanjeev brings up, that where this originated from. And if this governing body wants to bring this back, like if it should be a conversation between the planning board and this subgroup that's been working on this.
I think the idea was, Michael, maybe you could speak to it, was the creep. They were worried
It was
about the
the creep.
creep.
That was what that was what the planning board was worried about, was with the 85%. Now, if someone does that, now the average for those 6 houses is great, you know, the setback is reduced, and then the next one and the next one and the next one.
So it keeps changing.
Ultimately, it keeps changing to
Getting
for the reduced setback.
So if
And
we get
that's-
closer to this
That's right. Then the houses would creep closer to the street.
street.
That's why it came up as 75% first. And the same thing was discussed in the pre-zoning commission. And I asked the same question and they went back and brought it to 85%. They felt that is the way to go. Because it's not just one house next door, it's 3 houses on the left, 3 houses on the right. If you're in the corner property, 3 houses on one side and 3 houses on the other street, what their prevailing things are. And that is how they were trying to make sure that they're not just burdened when all the application comes in, and they felt that it was okay because they've been doing this for a very long time. So to me, going back to 100%, you're not changing much. I mean, if it's 25.
Well, you're changing that. You're eliminating the fact that everybody's 40.
Right.
You're now going to the 6 houses on either side. That's really the change. So if you live on a street where the setback is only 20 feet, then that's 20 feet. If you live on a street where it's 40 feet, then it's 40 feet. Today, it's 40 feet no matter where you live. And therefore, if you live on a street where it's 20 feet and you try to do 20 feet like everybody else, you're still stuck with coming for a variance.
Yeah, I like to hear the other side as well, make that if it's 100% is good, or what is their thought process behind coming up with 85%? So.
Mr. Petter,
That's
you were
where I
at the
stand.
meeting,
Yeah,
so
I'm
can
happy
you
to
speak to
opine,
it?
absolutely. Yeah. So just for the benefit of everybody here, you know, the zoning code examination subcommittee includes, you know, municipal staff, members of the Board of Adjustment, as well as the planning board. So there's a lot of different perspectives. And the Board of Adjustment's annual report has highlighted this as an issue. They've seen repeated applications for front yard setbacks, given this issue that Mr. Cullen was just alluding to. And there was some discussion at the zoning code examination subcommittee that allowing for some flexibility forward and behind the line would give residents more opportunity to put a little portico or cover your front door and allow that to encroach slightly over this prevailing setback line. But then again, to Mayor Miggins and Mr. Cohen's points, the planning board, as was discussed, there was concern that that would lead to some creep. I think that putting on my township planner hat, and as far as my professional recommendation to you all is, I think that the 100% prevailing setback is probably the correct way to go at this point. Ordinances can always be adjusted again. Let's see what the impact of this is and how that streamlines residential applications before the Board of Adjustment. And if the Board of Adjustment by statute under municipal land use law is required to submit an annual report to this body every year, they'll report back to you, let you know this is still a problem, or you know, this still needs to be corrected.
My follow-up question
Sure.
on this is, if there is 40 feet, 20 feet, and 20 feet, and then on the other side, there is also 40, 40, and 40. Now, what are you going to do? Is that average, and then that is 100% that you're going to do?
Yeah.
Correct.
That will also
Yeah.
creep in.
No, it doesn't change. It's the average of the 6 houses. So, you know,
But if it is 20, 20, and 40, you are now creeping into 30. It is not straightforward. We had a lengthy discussion on in the same scenario. So it is not black and white, cut like that. Okay, that is just my thought process, and I'm trying to explain it because I was in that meeting asking the same questions. So if it was going to be 100% good, then those people should have proposed that as well. From 75, they came to 85. Now blank 100% from planning board, I would actually want to go back to that and ask them to review this and come up with their recommendation as well, instead of just passing the laws. But again, it is my thought process, and that is what I'm trying to explain it, like you explained from the planning board.
Mr. McDonald, did you wish to say something?
Well, I think just to be clear that you will have, I think, have time between now and the public hearing of this adoption to speak to, I think the zoning board chair is on that, as well as the deputy chair. But I think the other factor in this is that this went to the planning board and these are the changes they recommended. The committee has the ability to accept or deny those changes. If you don't accept those changes, then it would create another process that would have to be followed in this. But to Mr. Benayek's point, we can certainly speak to them and see if they have any particular issue regarding the 100%.
So
Yeah,
may
and
I-
in furtherance
may I
to-
pass along to say that we push this out another meeting.
It will be pushed out.
And not the
No, but
resolution,
he-
not the
Oh, the
resolution.
resolution. Oh,
Yeah.
the acceptance of the
Actually,
changes.
You can't,
Fair.
you can't move the second reading though, right? We have to start from scratch. We can't just move a second reading.
Joe.
You could move, if you don't want to make any change on the ordinance that, as it was sent to the planning board for their analysis, you could adopt that tonight.
No, I
You
think we
don't
want
have
to, but I think we want to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm with
so
Sanjeet to, oh,
I'm taking the next step.
Got it.
So one of your options would be to say, thank you, planning board. We considered your recommendation, but we like the ordinance the way we first drafted it. That's a legal option. I'm not taking any position on the merits at all. The other option, and the one that is prepared for before you tonight, which you can reject, is to amend the ordinance that was introduced at the last meeting to accommodate the recommendations of the planning board to go to this 100%. And that would mean postponing the second reading and public hearing on the ordinance until the next meeting. Now, you have another option, I guess, which is to carry the public hearing to another date as you figure out what you want to do. You have various options. I can't speak
wait,
to
so
the
we
merits
can,
of
wait,
it.
we can just carry, like, we can decide.
can-
So we may be able to propose to table it for next meeting.
You can carry the public hearing, open the public hearing and conceivably take some comments or just open the public hearing and move to postpone it to October 3rd. And in the meantime, decide what you want to do. There's options that you can undertake here. Or you can just, adopt the resolution that's been prepared that makes the changes, carries everything over to the October 3rd date, at which time you can have these internal discussions
But
and
we can't
decide,
Can we make amendments at that point?
well, you could do it again later. Yeah, I mean, you could do it again later, but it's a question of how quickly you want to move on this. You
They
could,
spend a year in talking about this and I want to
Probably
just
more
make
than a
sure
year.
that
Yeah. I agree with Sanjeev.
But we have to vote on this, right? We have to vote on this resolution?
Or we can table
well,
it.
Or we can- or
you
vote to
can
table.
adjourn the public hearing. I wouldn't table, adjourn the public hearing to October 3rd. And in the meantime, you can decide what you want to do and maybe amend it further then.
Well, I guess my question is you'd have to go, if you're having a question where the planning board's concerned, the planning board meets again they don't
No,
have.
I think the
it
question
wouldn't-
is for the subcommittee,
it
it's
would-
not for the plan. We know how the
Subcommittee.
planning
Yeah.
board feels.
I want to take their input, the subcommittee who actually initiated this whole thing from 75, then they came down to 85%. I just want their opinion.
But you would have,
What
you
they
could,
feel
you
of
could
this.
have that if we vote to pass the amendments, right?
Yeah.
You have the time to do that. And then when it comes to the second hearing, you'll share those comments and based on those comments, we'll decide what to do.
Make the changes then.
Right. Either we'll agree with those comments or not.
And I'm happy to convene the zoning code examination subcommittee to solicit that feedback and comments and share that at the next meeting.
Okay, so until then, my vote for this is I don't agree or not agreeing with planning board is not that. It's just because I want to hear more, not just pass anything in hesitation.
Okay.
Or not hesitation, I
Tonight-
mean, passing it.
If
very
you,
quickly.
if you vote tonight on the resolution that's now been put together
Mhm.
to amend the ordinance, you're not voting for anything final.
Right.
Right.
You're voting to postpone in effect the public hearing to another date and give public notice of the changes in the ordinance.
So I'm going to ask for a second for resolution 23-230, which amends ordinance 2646-23 per recommendations of the planning board.
Second,
Roll call vote, please.
Mr. Cullen?
yes.
Ms. Lucas?
I'm still a little unclear, I'm so sorry, but are we voting, if we vote on this, then is tonight the second reading?
No,
of this?
no.
Oh,
No, if you
No.
vote on,
That's
if
what
you
I
vote
was-
on the
All
that's
this
what I
does
was
is
like,
change
I
the
don't-
resolution under discussion.
okay, got it. That's what I was a little confused
I'm
about.
sorry,
Okay.
So
wasn't clear.
I'm good that we are gonna have a second hearing.
Okay, so
And, but in the meantime, the subcommittee
we'll meet.
will meet and
Yep.
we'll get
Clarity.
feedback. Great,
So you
so
have
I'm
to
good, yes, yes.
Ms. Romano?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Benaya?
And I don't want to make any changes unless I hear from the sub-planning, so it's a no for me.
Mayor Higgins?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. I declare the hearing open. Yes? Do I declare this hearing? Oh, no.
No.
No, we're not going.
No.
Right, so right,
No,
tonight
we do not.
originally was the second,
Yes.
right? Okay, I'm
That's
not
right.
crazy. All
You're
right,
not
No, you're
crazy.
no,
that's what I was like, I
absolutely
don't
not.
understand. This is the second here, right? So we
Yeah.
postponed the second hearing.
That's
Correct.
right, to accommodate the
amendment.
recommendations of the planning board.
Right,
No public hearing tonight.
we're postponing it.
Postponing it to
So what did we
October
agree
3rd.
to? We agreed to
change the-
postpone it.
We agreed to change the
Right.
ordinance
You
under
agreed to amend the
discussion.
ordinance.
You agreed to three
To
things. You
change the
agreed
ordinance under discussion.
to amend the ordinance
Oh,
to
I want-
provide for 100.
Okay,
uh,
my
feet.
vote would have been no, sorry.
Let me just explain so
Yeah.
that there's no confusion. You agreed by the resolution to amend the ordinance to accommodate the recommendation of the planning board to go to 100 feet. You,
100%.
100%, sorry. You agreed to postpone the public hearing on that amended ordinance
Yeah.
to October 3rd.
Yep.
And you instructed that notice be given. I'm sorry, October 3rd, yeah, sorry.
No, September 19th.
September 19th. And you also agreed that the notice would be published in the item, so the public would know what the public hearing is going to be
On
on
September
on
19th.
September 19th.
Got it, on this amended
Right.
ordinance.
On the amended,
On the amended.
And we agreed that there will be a meeting.
yes.
Got it, all
You
right.
good? All right. Old business, rent control, Mr. McDonald. Let's talk about rent control.
Yes, so the township committee had asked me to look into rent control and what some municipalities have done in the past. I spoke with some colleagues, in particular, a colleague that had done rent control in Little Ferry as well as Asbury Park. Had some fruitful discussion, but what really came out of the discussion was that you should have somebody, a planner, look at the data and facts around your current rental stock as well as the economics of rent control. And so what I did at that point is asked Topology to provide a proposal, which I had provided to the township committee to do that work. I'm not saying that it has to be Topology, but it gives you some sense of that, what the work is that goes into it. But certainly I've asked Graham to just explain a little bit more in terms of the process and his familiarity with the process. When it comes to that initial data gathering phase of this, to understand rent control in all of its complexity and what that might mean for Milburn in particular. So I don't know, Graham, if you have anything that you want to add to that, but.
Thank you. I'll just add a few commentary that, the proposal that we submitted, really any rent control ordinance, as Alex alluded to, should be built on foundational data collection and information about market conditions and availability and those things. So we structured it that, we do have that period of kind of data research gathering. And then, if conditions appear favorable based on the research findings, then we would move forward. But, so there is an important piece that needs to be done first, to look at the existing rental market conditions that we have on the ground before we proceed with something. So just wanted to clarify that.
Mr. Pedro, I'm sorry, I was out in July meeting when you guys discussed the rent control. Just for my clarification, is that rent control for every apartment and houses in town, or is it going to be just owned by someone, or what is it?
I don't necessarily want to opine too much because we haven't gotten to the point of designing an ordinance, but typically, rent control ordinances are applicable to larger unit properties and not subject to 2, 3, 4 family dwellings, typically 5 and more.
So we are trying to say that there are 4 or 5 buildings, I'm just numbering it, 1, 2, 3, 4. If their rents are whatever the rents are, we are going to be controlling those rents
So-
with this?
There would be limited increases and there would be, there would be mechanisms within the ordinance that would restrict the amount that a rent could go up year over year, for example, or other mechanisms. in place.
There are, so one is that there are different types of rent control as well. You can have strict rent control, you can have, I think it's called moderate rent control, where with strict rent control, it is as long as that apartment is in existence. But with moderates, as long as if somebody moves out, then you can change the parameters of that rent, you can increase that rent. There's a lot of information that would need to be gathered. Some communities have, they would put together a subcommittee to look at this. They would eventually, if you go forward with an ordinance, it establishes a board to review this. And there's a lot to this. This is not a short term effort. This would be a long-term effort that would require the initial information to see whether it is even viable to move forward or needed to move forward with. And I think that's what that in particular this proposal offers. I think Graham and Topology had set this up where it's, sort of phase 1 is this information gathering, and then should the committee decide that there's no need to move forward, then we're done with that process.
So with this rent control, are we going to give any kind of tax abatement or discount to these buildings, or no? It's just, we can just push that along.
Eventually, the economics of it, again, there are economics to it where that may end up resulting in, a different tax assessment based on the amount of revenue that they can bring in on a rent control property. So there's a lot of factors.
I have a question in the data gathering. How will you factor? And so we're going to see a substantial increase in the market rate apartments in all of the affordable buildings, but the 80% that's not affordable. How will you be factoring? And that will, in my opinion, definitely change the economics of the rental market from what it currently is. How are you planning to factor that in?
Yeah, we're we haven't done any work on this yet, but
Sure.
As far as
Planning.
speculating out, what we're going to be doing is looking at what is on the ground now, but then also, because we have access to the information as far as the number of units that are coming online, looking at some of those prospective things, and then looking at general larger area market rate conditions.
Because I'm not sure like a building like the Annie Says building, it's not even built. I don't know that they've decided what they're going to be charging for their market rate units. So, but I would imagine it'll be at the higher end of the way things are now. And I just want to make sure that that's taken into the statistics and reflected in, as we look at the data.
Certainly, that's great.
How much is your proposal?
I think it's in 3, I don't have it.
Yeah.
It's gonna make
5,500 first.
5,500.
And then what are the next?
That's as far as. Right?
It was in the packet.
It's 5,000 for the first phase, and then the ordinance drafting is 3,500, and the regulatory adoption process is
12,752.
And then I have another question. We had talked about using perhaps the trust fund, the Affordable Housing Trust Fund, as rental assistance potentially. And this is not the same at all, but is there any way that we could use some of this?
To pay for the study?
No, but some of this data to tell us if that would even be a possibility and like what units would potentially even be open, how to use that, how to do that for our next round of meeting some of like.
I mean, it's our information, so we can do with what we want with it, as long as
Okay.
it is applicable to what.
But is there-
To answer your question, whether I know whether that data is important to that
Is
conversation,
it?
I do not.
And is
know
there a
that.
way to figure that out before they go out and do that? If there's just like a little bit more that would help us in that conversation? The question is, using our trust fund, our Affordable Housing Trust Fund, using rental assistance to then get some units so that when the next time when we have affordable housing
Rust on us.
right, our numbers and what's dictated, if some of that can be used through existing rental units. So I don't know, it's just a question I'm putting out there, if there's any way, because if you're gonna be doing this work for us, at least we'll find out how many rental units there are in the town.
890.
Okay, well, we have that.
30 of them are low and moderate.
We already have, we have
30 at the Upton, so that
Maybe
leaves us
that's-
860 market rate units. The bigger question is, the more important question, I think, for us in that, for 2025, for y'all, is the vacancy rates, because I think that's going to be critical, is the vacancy rate. You know, the Upton's got a 10% vacancy rate, and all these other units have vacancy rates, and out of 860 units, you've got a 20% vacancy rates, then why do we need to do anything
Right,
more?
that won't change, but we could track it. So maybe that's something that like in your, as you go about and tell us, you can look at vacancy rates,
Sure.
at least
That's
this,
so
in
important
this
for the future.
snapshot. I don't know
Yeah,
if there's
so
any
for current
other important things, just because we're looking at the rentals or having someone do some data analysis on it.
Graham did this in Montclair, yeah?
Yes.
So he's had a history of doing it. So he kind of has a playbook, I assume, right? Okay, great. Any other questions? Nope, no other old business.
Can I just ask, is there a consensus for us to move forward with
Yes.
topology in this
Sure.
way?
Yes.
Again, it doesn't have to be
Yes,
topology, but
yes, yes.
you know, they
yes,
are-
yes. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have, the only new business I wanted to just bring to everyone's attention was that when we were at the planning board the other evening, they adopted the historic element of the master plan. The historic element hasn't been done since 1991, so they did adopt the historic element of the master plan. And they're also working on, just so you know, the planning board on the element of the open space and fields. That'll be something else that then eventually will be brought over to the planning board to hopefully be adopted. So a lot of these elements in our master plan haven't been done since the 90s, and so we're bringing them all up to date, which is really nice. And that is all.
What is in this new business that they have already accepted
The
what was
planning
there?
board, the plan, yeah, there were certain buildings, I guess, that were in there, but the historic element hadn't been done since
No,
91.
but the buildings, if they're accepting something as a
What's new?
historic designation, doesn't it come to us first? And then it goes there?
It's not even, no, this was just to adopt, to update the master plan. Graham, do you want to speak to it, just so you can tell them?
Happy to.
I just want to understand what we are
Sure,
doing
sure.
here.
So the planning board at their last meeting, August 16th, I believe it was, adopted the historic preservation element of the master plan. The historic preservation element identifies properties throughout the township that may be worthy of local landmark designation.
So does
there
that
is a
go to
separate
planning
and
board
apart-
first, or it comes to us first and then it goes to
The
planning?
master plan and its elements are
Strictly
solely
planning.
jurisdictional.
planning.
Okay.
Correct, correct.
I think, but also just in terms of you're
Yes,
asking about
The
Yeah, what is in
designation
there?
process.
Yeah.
yeah. So-
designation process in
Right,
general.
yes, so the master plan element identifies properties that that warrant further study for consideration to be considered as local landmarks. The master plan also identifies policy recommendations to support historic preservation and make sure that township investments are supportive of historic preservation. Lots of broad policy statements. The action to designate a historic property is a clearly defined process in DRZ-804, I believe. And that process sets forth a very strict and lays out a very long process. There's a requirement that a nomination report be prepared by the Historic Preservation Commission. The property or properties that are subject to designation have to meet one of 5 different criteria that's consistent with the National Park Service, National Register of Historic Preservation criteria. The HPC has to hold a public hearing, then they send a recommendation here, then it becomes an ordinance, then you send it to the planning board for advisory review consistency, and then it comes back here for second read. So there's a
Like we
long
did with the
process.
Parcel House and other
Correct,
buildings.
exactly.
Yeah.
So the plan element just kind of sets the table of saying this is what
What
may
could
be
be.
worthy to
What
apply
could
for.
be.
So this is new business coming in. I'm just assuming that it'll become old business, but you're just letting us know that planning board has accepted this historic.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
it, right?
That's it.
Okay.
To the best of my
Is-
knowledge, that's it.
The open space element, is that coming, what,
Yeah.
is
Rec-
that come,
Yeah,
totally
rec and
not.
open space, yeah.
yeah, is that coming to, is that go to the planning board then? It
Same
doesn't
thing,
come to
planning
the
board
TC.
has jurisdiction over
Yeah,
that
so
final
that's not
adoption of that document.
coming to the TC.
So
No, We'd like to know about it, though.
Yeah,
No,
I
I'm
mean, we
just
can certainly,
asking,
I
but like,
think,
it's not, we're not voting on it.
correct.
So
And when it gets presented to the public, it will be done through the planning board,
At a
not
public
the
hearing.
township. I'm just,
Correct.
I'm just putting
Putting
that
it
out
out
there
there.
to the
That's fine.
community.
again, another question is, why is it a new business when you're a liaison? Again, I'm not just directly saying anything. I'm just understanding the process here. In my report, I'm a liaison between PSAB and here, and I brought whatever was done in PSAB here in my report. Why is this is new business and not in reports? Just understanding the process.
Sure, I appreciate that. We put it here because we wanted you to be aware that the planning board had adopted this. And that it hadn't been done since the 90s, and that they had adopted it. And that's why Graham's here to discuss it as well. We wanted it brought up to everybody that the historical designations, yes, we've done it before. Now it's up to redo, then we're finished with it. Now we're finished with it. Now HPC does whatever they want to do with it. But it was just so you're aware of the fact that the update has been completed on the historic element of the master plan. So should the HPC choose to do anything with it, we should know about it.
It could have been done in a report, though. It's not really
That's
business
why I
for
was
us to
just
talk about. We're not really,
Understanding
Yeah.
why it's in,
Okay.
but it's
They
fine,
haven't done
it
it in
doesn't
a
matter.
report.
I mean, as long as there is nothing follow up into moving it to old business and talking about this, that's all I wanted to have.
I understand.
Thank you.
May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
so moved.
May I have a second? All in
Second.
favor?